There is nothing worse than watching a player with all the talent in the world crumble when the moment is biggest.
The Arizona Cardinals imploded in their first playoff game with Kyler Murray. There's no way to sugarcoat that.
Today, we're running through the biggest chokers in the NFL right now. The guys you know are going to cost their team when it matters most. So with that out of the way, let's dive right into it. Tua Tagovailoa, QB, Miami Dolphins. It seems like we see the same story play out every year. The Miami Dolphins offense looks like an all-time juggernaut in September. You know, assuming Tua is able to stay healthy. But once those winter months roll around, that seemingly very same offense comes to a screeching stop. And things only seem to get worse when the Fins qualify for the playoffs. Whenever the chips are down or the going gets tough, this is a completely different offense. And we've seen this play out over and over again with the common denominator being Tua Tagovailoa. This dude racks up MVP buzz early in the season, but when he faces actual playoff teams, he suddenly goes silent. Stats nosedive, the mistakes pile up, and by the time the Dolphins are eliminated, they're left wondering how the same quarterback could look so different once the stakes were on the rise. Deebo Samuel, WR, Washington Commanders. Over the past few years, two things are very true. When Deebo Samuel is healthy and everything's clicking, he's a nightmare to stop. But for one reason or another, whether it be the pressure of the moment or nagging injuries, he always seemed to disappear whenever the 49ers needed him most. Seems that the Commanders brass thinks that perhaps a fresh start in Washington will be able to change that. But you know, until he actually proves otherwise, this pattern is just going to be impossible to ignore. Kyler Murray, QB, Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray might be one of the most frustrating quarterbacks in the entire league. There are moments, brief, fleeting moments, where he looks absolutely unstoppable. But against top-tier teams or in the playoffs, it's just a disaster every single time. I mean, think about this. In his one playoff appearance, Murray had a passer rating of 40.9 with 137 yards and 2 interceptions. And as bad as the stats are, the tape was even worse. Any semblance of pocket presence disappears, and the decision-making deteriorates. And instead of elevating his team, well, he just looks completely overwhelmed. He has all the talent in the world, but when you consistently crumble under pressure, that talent only gets you so far. Trevon Diggs, CB, Dallas Cowboys. Trevon Diggs loves to talk, and to be fair, he's got the highlight reel plays to back it up. You know, when he guesses right. But far too often, particularly in the big moments, he swings and misses, getting burned for a big play. And frankly, he isn't the kind of corner that you want to lean on when it comes to shutting down elite receivers in big games. More often than not, Diggs is getting cooked. Big plays look nice and all, but getting beaten crunch time is killer. Jake Elliott, kicker, Philadelphia Eagles. Elliott has certainly had his big moments, but when the Eagles desperately needed him in high-pressure situations, particularly once the distance needs to be dialed up for the kick, the consistency just hasn't always been there. He finished the 2024 season with a 28 of 36 mark on field goals when he went just 1 of 7 attempts from 50-plus yards. You know, in the modern NFL, you need your kicker to be able to deliver on those kind of kicks with a higher degree of regularity. Marshon Lattimore, CB, Washington Commanders. Marshon Lattimore is one of those guys who looks the part, but doesn't always play like it when it matters most. Whether it was his up and down tenure in New Orleans or now in Washington, same pattern keeps repeating itself. Lattimore isn't as reliable as his reputation suggests, especially when you factor in his hot temper, which has resulted in him catching untimely penalties far more often than a veteran ever should. Mark Andrews, TE, Baltimore Ravens. Mark Andrews has been one of the best tight ends in football in recent years, at least until the playoffs roll around. Then he's either hurt, struggling to get open, or just outright invisible. Or worse, you know, what we saw this past year with a couple of horrendous drops that essentially cost the Ravens the game against Buffalo. For a guy who puts up the numbers that he does during the regular season, you would think that he'd be Lamar's go-to weapon in must-win games. But man, that couldn't be further from the case. Jared Goff, QB, Detroit Lions. Jared Goff is a perfectly fine quarterback when conditions are perfect. But man, throw him in a cold weather game and things really start to get hairy. But what's even more concerning is what we've seen out of Goff in hostile playoff environments. Whether it was the Super Bowl back in the day with the Rams against New England, or the shocking loss in this past year's NFC Championship game against the Washington Commanders, it looks like he's just a completely different player. The turnover monster starts to rear its ugly head, and he can barely sustain a drive. Lamar Jackson, QB, Baltimore Ravens. The 2019 Ravens Ravens went 14-2, earned the #1 seed, had a record 13 Pro Bowlers and 6 All-Pros, and became the first team in NFL history to average 200 yards passing and 200 yards rushing in the same season. And yet, they lost immediately in the divisional round. And to make matters even worse, the offense looked completely different. All right, jump ahead to 2023. Another 1 seed, All-Pros all over, and once again, the air came ripping out of the balloon in the playoffs. Fast forward to this year, and yeah, it was more of the same. Baltimore continues to put different pieces around Lamar and shift the approach coaching-wise, but it has been to no avail. As impressive as he is, it's hard not to see Jackson as the common denominator in this situation. Dak Prescott, QB, Dallas Cowboys. Every year, it's the same story. Strong regular season, hype building around Dallas being a real contender, and then a complete meltdown when it matters the most. The interceptions come in bunches, the offense sputters, and the Cowboy season ends with another what could have been. Sure enough, Dak Prescott is always at the center of it all. Now, obviously, in 2024, those issues ran a bit deeper. But fact of the matter is that Dak has done little to nothing to address the choker allegations. Justin Herbert, QB, Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert's defenders, of which there are still many, though I will say they are starting to dwindle, will scream about everything except the one thing that actually matters: his own play when the pressure is ratcheted up. They always bring up that it's the coaching, the defense, the lack of weapons, the injuries, the bad luck. There's always some excuse to his play. How about the fact that in his 2 career playoff games, he has a 60.7 passer rating with just 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions? And you know what's crazy about that? Those numbers are actually a little inflated. Almost all of his production came in the first half of the disastrous collapse against Jacksonville a couple of years back when they blew a 27-0 first half lead to the Jaguars. Sam Darnold, QB, Seattle Seahawks. The former #3 overall pick has built an entire career on underwhelming play in big moments. And this year with the Minnesota Vikings was a painstaking example of just that. Despite having the best season of his career and the Vikes making a run at the NFC North crown, he melted down when the team really needed him to step up. We saw it first during the season finale against the Detroit Lions when he completed just 43.9% of his passes with no touchdowns and 166 yards in a humiliating 31-9 loss with the division crown on the line. Then again in the playoffs against the Los Angeles Rams when they once again only mustered up 9 points as a team, and he seemed to rediscover every bad habit that he has ever had in his NFL career. Greg Zuerlein, kicker, New York Jets. With all the noise surrounding the New York Jets and the Aaron Rodgers saga the past couple of years, the last thing that they needed was the bottom to fall out of their special teams. But that's exactly what happened with Greg Zuerlein. Zuerlein managed to single-handedly cost them multiple games this year. Games that, had he just done his job, could have actually put the Jets in the playoff race. Russell Wilson, QB, New York Giants. Man, last year fell apart fast for Russell Wilson as he continued to be tortured by the same clutch time demons that possessed him during the Super Bowl all those years ago. It looked like the Steelers would be contenders with him at the helm, but unfortunately, it all came crumbling down in the stretch run. The strange thing about this is that he's a guy that seemed to build his reputation on being clutch, at least early in his career. And now, well, he's just the complete opposite. When the moment is biggest and he's expected to raise his level, wouldn't you know it, the mistakes are right there waiting to happen. Beyond the questions of his clutchness, I think it's safe to say that the days of Russ being a franchise quarterback are long gone. And unfortunately, with the way he chokes, it seems unlikely that he could really settle into a veteran game manager kind of role. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, WR, Seattle Seahawks. If you had to draw up a prototype of a wide receiver who teases you with big playability but crumbles the second the moments get real, you'd get MVS. Yes, he has all the physicality and speed needed to be a top receiver, but for years he has proven over and over to be the master of the untimely drops. Valdes-Scantling will make the occasional 50-yard catch, but only when the game's already out of reach, or the season in the case of his production this past year with the New Orleans Saints. Need a meaningless ball when you're down by 20? Then yeah, MVS is your guy. But in the NFL, where the first-rate receivers are relied on to make tough contested catches with the game on the line, well, he's not that kind of receiver that you want to build around. The chances of him choking away the big moments are way too high. But hey, which NFL player do you think is the biggest choker in the game right now? Who do you think we're right on? Who do you think we were wrong about? Was there anyone that we may have missed? Let us know in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, then clicking the like button helps us out a ton, and you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.